The sheriff network rising, the global emergent response to the market collapse. When independent actors across 5 continents build the same solutions without a shared script, it isn't a narrative, it's an immune response. Mapping the emergent market sheriffs. Hi, my name is Sarah Trumbull, the founder and CEO of the Job Applicant Perspective for synonymous user reviews for job ads across the U.S. It's a level of go-to-market awareness as well as public service for the gaslighting. This is kind of demonstrating some of the rising other actors in the space outside of myself. I'm driving a paradigm shift, and the paradigm shift is popping up all over the place, and I would like to just talk about that. So, yeah. The proof is in the triangulation. If one person tells you the sky's falling, it could be a story. Again, discernment always, but yeah, I mean, you don't know for sure unless you know the person. But when independent actors, neural network experts in London, governance researchers in Italy, trust architects in India, fraud hunters in Canada and Australia, all begin building the same kinds of sheriff tools without coordination or connection, finding each other only after they've launched or expressed this, we aren't really looking at a narrative anymore. We're looking at systemic emergence that is demonstrating the narrative lie. We're looking at reality breaking through a narrative. This is what it looks like when reality finally cracks through a polite fiction that can no longer hold. So, who is this for? What follows is not a news report. It is a map of a landscape undergoing a seismic shift. It identifies the first critical points of emergence, the rising stars whose independent efforts are triangulating the shape of a necessary future. Read it to understand the logic of the break and not just the facts of the breakage. The social rebuild, the spaces. Communities like Fight Fake Jobs, Recruiting Hell, and their many variations exist because LinkedIn cannot hold reality. LinkedIn is structurally optimized for the comfort of employers and the wealthy investor class, not the lived reality of 99% of the people using it. People go to LinkedIn to perform for like jesters for the kings, you know? They don't go there to like say true things. That's why I kind of enjoy saying true things there. It really messes them up. Because they're still officially, the rules are that you're just supposed to be professional and polite. So when you're just like true and polite, but you critique it academically, people don't know what to do. It's great. And it also reveals the lack of reality, because it's hard for me to lose in these scenarios, because if I say something true and they have nothing they can say back to it, they say nothing, then it sits there out there in the wild as totally true. And if they say something back, they've justified that I'm a peer able to be said something back to, which is already not as good because they're hoping that I'll be differential, which I'm not. And then if they say something back, they're not going to win because my math is better. My systems understanding is far, far superior. And then they'll look even worse, you know? So they're in a double binds. It's a win-win-win for me, whichever happens. Usually people just go with isolation, or they try to reframe. Occasionally I get people like, oh, I see you're looking for work. And I'm like, oh, that's such an interesting response. I'm so intrigued. I love meeting new folks like this. You know, how many connections you got? 8? But you went to Harvard? That's so fun. I'm so intrigued by people like yourself. But it's usually it's a reframe. Whenever you put something, they're trying to reframe it on you. And when you just watch the reframe, you're like, oh, I see what you did. It's so very cute. I'm amused. But I'm very good at frames and patterns, and I watch them. So anyway, these spaces reclaim what the public narrative suppresses: truth, dignity, grief, anger, and pattern recognition. The actors, figures like Jay Jones, the profiler, Mark Anthony Dyson, the Job Scam Report, and Ashley Price Horton, actively support these communities and surface their findings into mainstream visibility, including LinkedIn itself. Again, a lot of times reality is starting to break through on LinkedIn repeatedly, which is awesome. I love that for us. But, you know, we gotta keep fighting, because LinkedIn has the capacity to be something, but right now it's just king's courts, you know, for the wealth, for the oligarchy class. It's silly stuff. It's pleasant nonsense. People are asleep, you know. These social places like Substack and Reddit can be rage posting and public sense making. Here's the thing: expressing frustration and fury reasonably is what saves people's sanity, not what engenders harm. If you take the top off a teapot, you know, let some steam out. It's what helps people heal, to express their reality. The reality is these actors are reclaiming the human inner life of a job search, addressing psychological rubble left by a market with no accountability. The toxic positivity on LinkedIn is what allows it to continue. Jay's recent NBC feature is not a fluke. It's a signal that reality is becoming impossible to ignore. Governance is catching up in the UK, UK/Italy. The actor, Antonio Specchia, sorry, Antonio, if you watch this, I'm not sure if I said your name proper there. Founder of Noesis Hiring, had a chance to talk with him the other day. The shift, we have moved beyond HR efficiency into applicant relationship management. Love this for us. Treating hiring as a governance problem, not a workflow problem. Yes, yes, yes. As this website suggests, an applicant tracking system, ATS system, eliminates applicants. An ARM system cultivates them. Yes, in a two-sided market, it should never have been an ATS system. Filtering is not matching. Filtering is not matching. It's not at all. As this website suggests, job applicants aren't data to filter. They are stakeholders to cultivate. Yes. In an ATS system, communication is one way. In an ARM system, communication is bidirectional, by necessity. My goodness, yes. The lack of bidirectional feedback in this two-sided market is just a red glaring flag as to a dysfunctional, cognitive distortion. One of the reasons that I don't think this is a conspiracy, it's cognitive architecture of mind, is because every other person with all these business degrees knows well and good that bidirectional feedback is required in all cases, and they actively can't get to the point of engaging with it in this one, which for me doesn't speak to conspiracy. It speaks to identity, So harm is happening. Harm is being chosen, but it's not being intentionally chosen with malice of intent, but it's still happening. But in an ATS system, it's bidirectional always. In an ATS system, an AI's role is to filter. In an ARM system, an AI's role is to start a conversation. In an ATS system, rejected applicants are forgotten or sold into talent pools. In an ARM system, rejected applicants are re-engaged as silver medalists. Yeah, say you don't plant the tomato plant over here, you can still plant it over there. Yeah. In an ATS system, an outcome is a hire maybe. In an ARM system, an outcome is a relationship always. Hiring is not the store and it's not the customer. It's the relationship between them. It's a relationship. That's the thing. That's what a market is. The relationship, the push, the pull, the supply, and the demand. That's what a market is. This is not a market we've been working with. Hiring is a rule of law function in a labor market, not a courtesy, not a branding exercise. It's ESG, not optics. Yes. The identity and trust layer in the U.S., the actors, Jay Renner from Livework, and aligned trust-focused builders cross borders. Him and his team are building a walled garden and gathering actors like James Hutchinson from Heavy Resume, Jeff Spice from Practice Interviews, and John Griffith from Project Trailhead for the hire ecosystem. That's hiring innovation reform ecosystem. I think I'm saying that right. Yeah, me too. I also engage with them a lot. So, the reality, these efforts restore something the market stripped away, meaning, continuity, and personal agency. Yeah. They help workers reconstruct identity in a system that treated them as disposable data exhaust. And in doing so, they repair trust at the individual level where no platform ever bothered to ask. Accountability is emerging. Canada, Netherlands, Australia, US, the actors. Ghostjobs.io in Canada, JobNarc in the Netherlands, Ghosted.com in Australia, the job applicant perspective myself. Independent investigators like Jay Jones. Jay is really interesting because he does recruiters. There's people will copy real recruiters, just take the picture from LinkedIn, make another profile, the same picture, copy all the things underneath it, and then, send job seekers to get their identity stolen. So super uncool, You can tell there's there's always a couple Bruce Waynes. There's a couple Crown Princes of Dubai for a little while there. What Jay does is check the email addresses. Also, he keeps a list of these email addresses. He keeps a list of the photos because you can just check their photos and oh, there's 3 of you. How fun. The reality, whether through algorithms, collective reporting, or decentralized review systems, these actors are actively hunting fraud, ghost jobs, scams, identity theft, and incentive structures that extract unpaid labor at scale. When financial incentives reward obstruction instead of matching, abuse isn't accidental, it's inevitable. These efforts realign incentives with reality. The civic signal, why this matters, what's most telling isn't that these sheriffs are rising. It's how they respond to one another. Every new node that lights up is relieved to find the other. Every interaction begins with the same kinds of questions. Have you reached MVP? Have you found funding? Has any institution acknowledged this yet? That is not how competitors behave. It's not McDonald's reacting to Subway opening up nearby. It's wider learning that a dude named Doc Holliday moved in down the street. When Ghost Bad Jobs, formerly out of Vegas, went dark, people mourned. That is not market rivalry. That is how people respond when a fellow Viking falls. One of the most meaningful signals so far, the University of Molise is now actively engaging not in commentary, but in action. For years, academics have gestured towards the issue in the market, papers, but none had publicly aligned with platforms challenging the one-sided, two-sided labor market, where the labor force is assumed to owe unlimited unpaid time. Yeah, that's a whole other right there. Why the old models failed. To understand why the old market had to fail, we can apply its own economic logic. These aren't just metaphors. They are the operating codes that created a system of guaranteed harm. I love first principles. It's my bag, Systems thinker. First principles. That's my bag, So let's start with the first principles here. Non-converging Nash equilibria enforced by ATS systems. Employers optimize for filtering, job seekers optimize for visibility. So employers double down on filtering in this, job seekers double down on visibility, boom, 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 and there it goes ad nauseum. It was never going to work. ATS in and of itself would have always caused market collapse. Outside of the fact I spoke to the last blog post, wildly unethical to put Americans to work generating revenue unpaid for a system that promises to block over 90% of them for the thing they came to the market for. Woo, that's a choice. But it also creates, national converging. The information asymmetry is almost complete there. So, which also brings me to the second point, Acre-Loft's lemon market, which outside of what I just said there, created by lack of regulation around scraping, platforms not incentivized to keep ghost jobs away from job seekers. What the newspaper would have lost money for, online platforms make money for doing. Ghost jobs are profitable. It's not like, why would there be ghost jobs? So why wouldn't there be ghost jobs? What would be a reason for there not to be ghost jobs? Kaleidoscope and a telescope both look like cylinders. They only look different when you're looking through them, right? When's the last time you looked at the job seeker experience? Never. That's the whole thing, right? We never look through it. We don't do user reviews. That's the gold standard. Never know what it feels like to be a job seeker. And that's why it's profitable. Because there was no reason to not do it. Yeah. So outside of that, but employers got in on it a while back, which again is what Acre-Loft did predict would happen. Information asymmetry would get worse, and then people would just do it more and more. Calder-Hicks reasoning that implicitly, this is where I treats Americans generating revenue unpaid in a market they can't opt out of for companies whose goal is to unemploy 90+% of them as acceptable. Here, economists using that terminology. I really don't think you know what you're saying, which is why I think it's a cognitive distortion some too. But if you do know, have fun with justifying that one, because, I think the 13th Amendment had conversation about that, but Jevons paradox failure modes created by adding one-click apply features and AI for employer side. Honest to God, the easier you make something to acquire, a resource to acquire, like a job post to acquire. I'm not saying you acquire the job, you acquire the job post. The easier you make it to acquire, the more you're going to acquire it, right? Increases the noise in the market. Whether or not that's employer or it's job seeker employers adding AI to employer side, what are we doing? Did no one take an econ class? I thought these were, again, I come at this from system stuff, so I don't know. But it seemed pretty straightforward to me. It's obviously a Jevons paradox. It's a terrible idea. Hey, I don't understand. But those are three interlocking layers. So Calder-Hicks is just reasoning to some degree. It's not actively part of it. But the ATS system would always create a non-converging Nash equilibria. Acre-Loft's lemons would definitely be already created by the ATS's information asymmetry, but also, and all the white labeling, but also the ghost jobs being profitable. That's a problem. And then employers admitting to it is just an acceleration of that. And then the Jevons paradox. Those are three interlocking structural failures of the online labor market. Add in, no one wants to work anymore, public rhetoric, and you get the public gaslighting of the workforce, driving a $100 billion a year industry that many times generated its revenue via keeping unpaid Americans that used the time of from the employment they sought to acquire. Yeah, guys, we got that's no good. The cognitive blind spot of experts around professionalism as performing a category error when it comes to hiring. Don't talk about your hiring process. Don't think about it as an expert. Think about it only from the employer perspective. And you get top tier hiring experts actively choosing market collapse, thinking it was strategy, wage stagnation for the populace at large, and an absolute recipe for civic instability. Honest to God, I don't think it's like there's suicide, there's fratricide, there's matricide, there's, I don't know what it is for sisters. Like, this feels like sociocide, like sociological suicide. Social contract, you know, we gotta work on that, you know? Intent was not required, impact was guaranteed. This is the first visible institutional break with that assumption. Check the research. My foundational academic white papers diagnosing the market error and what we can do about it, a job market for lemons, the 3 roles of online job seekers, category error in the talent acquisition industry, the laws of online hiring, 2 axioms and 1 corollary, reframing the structural logic of digital labor markets, and more. I have several papers on SSRN where you can track the evolution of my study of the market. The through line across all of them, we've systematically undervalued relational integrity as an infrastructure problem. Yeah. Overall, I think we have deeply misunderstood the nature of empathy as data integrity feature in online complex dynamic systems. And engaging with care on this score, it's not about softness, it's about clean data. Signaling disdain in an online era is more about signaling information isolation. Think about it. I think to some degree, information always was power, but information used to come through powers, so to speak, through institutions, through hierarchies. You know, you work for the university, you work for the library, you work for the wherever, the government, right? And signaling disdain was pumping yourself up, was signaling you're important, signaling you're powerful, and that made you closer to the information. In the information age, signaling disdain doesn't make you closer to the information flow, it separates you from it. And it's the vendors are just manipulating the old school patriarchs left, right, and center. Oh, you're better than, you're more important than. What do they do here? But like, I can't stop the information from flowing to you anymore. But what I can do is stop you from listening to the information you're hearing. So when you signal disdain, what you do is you pay for information that you could have got for free. You're just paying for it. Or you don't listen to information that would have taught you that the vendor is full of crap, a snake oil salesman, you know? It's not good. Signaling disdain in the online era is more signaling information isolation. Don't get me wrong. I think as this progresses, it will flip into more of a covert, narcissistic kind of empathy-based manipulation. But right now, I do think most of the people who rose to power and then before the web are getting wildly manipulated by vendors into thinking, oh, you're better than, you're more important than. What they're doing is just separating you from the information flow. Signaling empathy is signaling discernment, not outsourced to separate authority. I don't wait for somebody else to tell me to consider this information. I consider it for myself. Now, again, you have to be careful. I'm not saying just believe everything. There's still issues. But when you detachment is not discernment. It's just outsourced agency, you know? If I have group X, Y, and Z and I'm detached from group Z, what I am actually trying to do is keep myself neutral while I examine them. What I'm actually allowing myself to do is be manipulated by the groups over here about this group, you know? That's what it is. Why TJAP exists to protect against this future repeating. Even so, with all these great actors, I'm very proud of what I'm creating here. One of the quiet enablers of this collapse was not malice. It was the enforced silence of the labor force. For decades, job seekers were treated as inputs, not participants in hiring. They were expected to endure opaque processes, donate time and emotional labor, absorb rejection without explanation, and remain professional, which in practice meant quiet. It's not about conscious choice at a certain point. It's about embodied subconscious safety. At Riders and the Elephants, Jonathan Haidt. I think it's true, you know? It's not about whether or not people intend to do something. I'm consciously, actively working on my stuff, but subconsciously, I have to like talk myself through like, even like opening an email sometimes when I'm anxious, like, just open it. This is not a bomb. Open your email. It's wild. And it's that sort of thing. It's about subconscious safety and having job seekers actively act with agency protects against this in the future because it also protects against everybody else who's freaked out about them acting with agency. They have to get used to it too subconsciously. because they're not villains, they're humans in this scenario. Not to turn the job market into a gladiator pit, but to turn it into a community. Engagement can be driven by community. It doesn't need to be driven by knife fights, you know? A market where hiring experiences are remembered, not erased. Game theory. Yeah. Job seekers warn one another, support one another, and heal together. Community. Somebody to catch you when you fall. Why is that? Why is that not what we want? Isn't that what community is for? Losing work doesn't mean falling alone through a system with no witness. The labor market does not need more extraction. It needs collective memory, signal, and mutual care. This is not radical. This is how functional markets behave. Every other market behaves this way already. It sounds radical here because we can't believe that we should do it here because we haven't done it here. But realistically, this is how they always behave. Closing what's actually happening. We are not sharing a script. We're observing the same system under stress. You can use your discernment and evaluate it from other angles, but this is what complex systems look like. And independently, across cultures and disciplines and incentives, we are building structures that can finally hold the truth job seekers have been living inside for years. For years, digitized deference led everybody to think that you genuinely can have a top-down view of what online hiring is. You genuinely cannot. The internet made the world into a snowstorm. You do not call the corporate office in a snowstorm. You talk to people on the roads. Yeah? These only represent a fraction of the independent reach outs I've had from career specialists, neural network specialists, platform economists, and systems theorists. Insight I drive at here is emerging all over. And when I say it out loud, I don't get the reaction of having created something, more the reaction of having revealed something others already knew or said something out loud they'd been saying privately. The job applicant perspective exists for one reason: to give the labor force a collective memory, an identity, a conscious space together, a signal and a voice in a market to rebuild the network that profited by denying all three. It's not revenge, it's not theater, and it's not perfect or finished or solved by any means. It's MVP. It won't be solved by me existing in the market, by me starting out and getting my first bit of funding. We have no easy outs here, perfect solutions. It's emerging structural market governance responding to overwhelming need. The goal here is to engage with reality. There is no perfect solution here. There is progress. Progress, not perfection always. Adaptability, meeting people where they're at. Yeah, that's it. Thanks very much. That is this article. And please be stay safe out there. Happy holidays to everybody, however you choose to celebrate it. We look forward to speaking with people more. I'm very passionate about this. I am, obviously driven. I think it's like 93-4 blocks in, but what I'm going to say, I'll be here as long as it takes. Like everybody else had to learn by, losing their identity the other way. This time, everybody was going to keep going at it. Because in the end, it's a beautiful system. The system deserves to be built. It deserves to live. It's like an idea baby, but it's right. It's right. It's why systems work. That's why their systems work this way, because this is the way, It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Get excited. We're knitting the band back together. We all live in a web here. There's a John, Paul, Ringo, and George. We're going to call it economic stability, The labor market. We're going to do the unions, the employed people, the public policy, the lawmakers. We're all going to knit it back together. Economic stability. It's going to be exciting. All right. Have a good rest of your day.